If Joe Brady was the number one target for the New Orleans Saints in their search for a head coach, they're going to have to look elsewhere because he just told them he's staying with the Buffalo Bills. We'll talk about this decision right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Rosvogel, and as always, the Straight Up Saints podcast is brought to you by Scott Vicknair Injury Lawyers. If you've been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, or hurt offshore, Scott Vicknair handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. So I wasn't planning on doing a little emergency podcast this Saturday, and right before I'm about to kind of head out here, I see the news Joe Brady is telling the Saints he's pulling out from their head coaching search. He's going to stay with the Buffalo Bills for at least one more season. And now the Saints, who planned on interviewing Joe Brady in person, which would have been his second interview, they're going to have to look elsewhere. And I think this is just one of those days where it doesn't matter if you're the most pessimistic Saints fan in the world, one of the most optimistic Saints fans in the world. You kind of just have to take this one on the chin, because the reality is coaches are telling you this isn't a great situation. Now, for some of us, we're not surprised, right? We've said it. Don't have your quarterback of the future. You're in cap hell right now. You don't have a lot of building blocks on this team. This is an aging roster. Your GM absolutely stinks. So there's a lot of problems with the Saints. So no one's sitting here going, oh my God, why wouldn't Joe Brady want to work for New Orleans? Like, this is such a prestigious franchise right now. No, it's not anymore, unfortunately. So we're not surprised by that. But when coaches who have been in your building don't want to return, it's a little different to me. Like, personally, Kellen Moore has no affiliation to the Saints. If Kellen Moore were to say, you know what, I don't want to work there because he hasn't worked with Mickey Loomis before and he hasn't coached in New Orleans, it's different. But when Aaron Glenn is kind of itching to go to the Jets and not even have an in-person interview with the Saints, that's a sign. When Joe Brady, who was an offensive assistant with the Saints in the Sean Payton era and doesn't have any other head coaching jobs lined up for him at this point because there's only one left, which is the Saints, and he doesn't want to coach for you, it's a sign. So there's so many factors to this. I don't know if it flat out is a Mickey Loomis problem, right? Like, for Jacksonville, it was a Trent Baalke problem. They fired Trent Baalke, and Liam Cohen was like, you know what? On second thought, I will be your head coach. I don't know if that's the problem for the Saints entirely, right? I do think it is a problem, but the Saints have so many problems right now that you got to factor in the bad cap. You have to factor in the bad quarterback situation. You have to factor in the fact that the defense is old. There's so many issues with this team. And it's not like you're picking number one so you could sell that to a coach. You're picking ninth, which is still a decent pick, but it's not great enough. So what are the options now that Joe Brady's off the table? Well, in terms of people that they've interviewed in person, it's only three right now. It's Anthony Weaver, it's Mike Kafka, and it's Darren Rizzi. We know what Rizzi brings to the table. Maybe he ends up getting the job, but does that feel like a fallback option? I'm not sure. I'm sure Saints fans wouldn't love that, but I there's a chance that his odds just shot up because I thought it was Joe Brady, Mike McCarthy, Darren Rizzi. Those were the three. Well, one of them's out the window now. So the other two's odds of being the head coach have to go up. And I'm going to be honest, the Saints haven't exactly really ramped up their attempt to get Mike McCarthy, which makes me think either he doesn't really want the job that bad, or maybe they're not sure they want to give it to him. So they've interviewed with three, like I said, in person: Anthony Weaver, Darren Rizzi, Mike Kafka. They would like to interview Kellen Moore in person, but they haven't. They're expected to interview Mike McCarthy in person, but they haven't. They'd like to interview Cliff Kingsbury, but if I'm Cliff Kingsbury, why the fuck would I go to the Saints? First off, I have my reservations about Kingsbury as head coach. I don't think he's a very good head coach, but he's a great OC right now with Jaden Daniels as his quarterback. And like Joe Brady, who has Josh Allen and knows that his stock is ascending, you can wait this out, right? What if the Bengals miss the playoffs next year? Wouldn't you like to coach Joe Burrow? You'll have that opportunity. So good jobs will eventually open up. The Saints are in hell right now. Like, that's just the blunt way of putting it. It sucks. When you're in this spot, the only way you really get pulled out of it is two ways. You find the right coach and you draft extremely well. And right now, you can't find a damn coach that wants this football team. And I don't know if you can trust the general manager to draft well when his history the past couple of years has been uninspiring. So this is the current state of the Saints, guys. I don't know who's going to end up taking this job. You either play it safe with Mike McCarthy. I don't want to say play it safe because with Darren Rizzi, you don't know, right? Like he could either flame out or who knows, maybe he's a good coach. You never know. So I don't want to say you're settling that necessarily for him. I think Mike McCarthy, who, by the way, I've said is a good football coach, I do believe that'd be somewhat settling because you're not swinging the bat. But let's say they hired Mike Kafka, or they hired Kellen Moore, or they hired Anthony Weaver. You're swinging at a 99-mile-an-hour fastball with a blindfold over your face, and you don't know where the fuck that ball is going to end up going. You don't. So we'll see what happens. To me, I didn't think Joe Brady was a can't-miss coaching candidate. It's just a sign, though, that this team is in just dire hell right now, and that's frustrating. So I'll go through any comments that you guys have. We'll kind of keep this pretty short because there isn't much news to report other than the fact that Joe Brady doesn't want to coach the Saints, and the Saints aren't a very good football team. But the second one wasn't breaking news for us, and the first one, we don't know if he would have been good. With Joe Brady, I think actually this is going to be beneficial to him in the long run. He's not going to take on as, incredibly challenging of a task as it will be fixing the Saints. And two, he needs a little bit more experience. So another year with the Bills, not a bad option for him. Obviously, you feel like you have a safety net with Josh Allen as your quarterback. So we'll see what happens there. Going through any of the comments you guys have, I'll just pull them up. Willie Handy says, well, M. Nelson says, thanks, Mickey. Eddie says, pitiful, a dumpster fire. Andre says he's going to wait till next year so he can actually have an appealing option. I think so. And look, I don't know what's going to happen with other teams. I'm not as dialed in with the rest of the NFL as I will be with the Saints. But if the Bengals miss the playoffs next year, they're getting rid of Zach Taylor. Joe Brady coached Joe Burrow at LSU. I'll just connect those dots a little bit in terms of if you're Joe Brady and you're trying to think about fixing your resume a little bit more and looking for a more appealing job, that probably is it. Although the Bengals are historically cheap. M. Nelson says, I'm willing to bet Loomis probably got in there, pumping up his chest, talking crazy, shaking my head, idiot. I don't know about that. Look, I'm not a big Mickey Loomis fan at the moment, but it's not just him. He is a big problem for this team. And you could argue that he has caused the other problems, right? The cap situation, the bad drafting, but it's all those factors that are going to be in play. But this is a problem. And I think the concern right now would be, if you're the Saints, is this next hire just going to be a lame duck process? Like, are they just going to bring in a new coach? They'll stink for the next 2 years, and then they'll completely blow up that regime. And then, by 2027, we'll be back in this spot again, talking about who wants to coach the Saints, but hopefully they'll be in a more appealing spot. I'd like to think so. I'd like to think that's where it's heading in terms of just being a realist, but we'll see. Rocco says nobody wants to work with Mickey Loomis. Eddie the Don says, gotta fire Mickey Loomis. No one wants to work for him. Justin says Mickey Loomis is the problem. John asks, is Loomis hurting our appeal? So, obviously here's the consensus, right? Loomis is public enemy number one right now for Saints fans. I think that's kind of obvious at this point. They're not going to, I don't know if they would just pull the trigger right now and say, hey, we got to get rid of Mickey. The reason I say that is I don't know if the Saints are in the same spot as other teams, right? And what I will say is, and I've said this multiple times, this better be the last hire he gets. Either he somehow pulls a rabbit, I'm going to say out of his ass at this point, and makes a freaking lucky hire that fixes this organization, or it doesn't, and he's gone in 2 years from now, and whoever the next GM is responsible for bringing in the next head coach of the Saints. To me, that there's only two windows here. There should not be a third chance to fuck it up, because usually you only get so many opportunities in the NFL. And it's kind of funny, right? Like the Jaguars had this Trent Baalke situation, and I'm sitting there and I'm kind of laughing like, wow, like why are you keeping Trent Baalke? What the hell? What's wrong with this team? They're such a mess. And yet if you just put a mirror right in front of your face, you'll be like, holy shit, well, my team's got a pretty similar issue. It's different to a certain degree because Trent Baalke has not had the early success that, let's say, Mickey Loomis did when it comes to Sean Payton, or let's say having a draft class as good as 2017. But those are the only two things you really hang up, and everything else is just a bunch of duds. So we'll see what happens. But I totally get if Saints fans are frustrated tonight. I would be frustrated. The only thing I could say that is a positive, or not even a positive, is we don't even know if Joe Brady's going to end up being a good football coach. I hope for his sake he is, but we have no idea. But this is a tough pill to swallow if you're in the camp that good ownership matters, right? You gotta be a team that people want to desire, right? No one really desires the Saints right now. Justin says Gale needs to wake the hell up and fire Mickey. 99 Dog says now I'm sure it'll be McCarthy. I'm not even sure at this point. I'm not really sure if it even is going to be McCarthy. I'd imagine if they meet with him and he's interested, he'll be the favorite, but I'm not even sure. Did he really say no to the Saints? Is this solid information? He did. Yeah. Reported by Ian Rappaport. He said Joe Brady has elected to remain with the Bills and pull out of the Saints head coaching search. Mind you, this decision was made, a day after it was reported the Saints want to bring him in for an in-person visit, maybe a couple hours after. I mean, I think earlier today, there was a report about who they want to bring in. Eddie says Cliff or Kellen Moore, in my opinion. I'm a little nervous about Cliff, and I'm going to be honest, guys. I'm not going to bet money, but if I were to bet money, I think there's no way in hell Cliff Kingsbury would take the Saints job, and I don't even think he wants to interview with the Saints personally. Maybe you do it just to build connections, and it's never a bad thing to take an interview, but I can't see how he would have interest in this job. He's still getting paid by the Cardinals pretty well. He's in a great situation with the Commanders, where his quarterback is an absolute stud, so you feel like his stock will be okay next year. And his tenure with the Cardinals ended on a sour note, right? Below 500, some turmoil in the locker room. And do you want to jump right back into a toxic situation, or do you want to wait it out and make sure you find the right spot so the second go around is better? So I don't even think it will be Cliff. So it's really, in my opinion, Anthony Weaver, Mike McCarthy, Darren Rizzi, Mike Kafka, or Kellen Moore, maybe. And I could get it. And I see people are talking about how, they like Kellen Moore, and I get that. And I'm not going to knock Kellen Moore. I think what he's done with the Eagles this year is incredibly impressive, right? They've turned themselves into such an incredible run team. Obviously, though, look at the talent they have, right? Like, if he were to come to the Saints, that we don't have the O-line that the Eagles have. We don't have the weapons that the Eagles have, although I'm sure he can make some things cook. But if you're Kellen Moore, why the hell would you want to go to the Saints either, too, right? Like, this is going to be your first crack at a head coaching job. I don't know. Now, what I will say, anyone who's been paying attention to the Cowboys situation, he was considered one of the favorites for that Dallas job. And according to ESPN, he really wanted that job. So I don't know if that means he would be eager to just take the next offer, or if he's going to kind of play his cards in a way where, just like Joe Brady, he decides, you know what, I'm okay. I'll wait. But we'll see. I mean, Sunday's game, Eagles-Commanders, one of those coordinators could meet with the Saints, depending on which one ends up losing. So we'll see what happens. Don says, I feel like McCarthy will sit this year out and just wait for next year for a better job. I feel like this could be it. It's going to go one of two ways, obviously, and I'm stating the no shit Sherlock take here. Either McCarthy settles and says, hey, fuck it, I'll be a coach for the Saints because I don't really want to take a year off. Or he says, you know what, I can do better than the Saints, and I'll wait because someone's always going to have a head coaching opening, and they'll want someone who has a pretty good resume and a stabilizer in terms of offense, and he'll bounce back. But I'm not as sure as I thought a week ago. A week ago, I thought it was going to be McCarthy, like even when Aaron Glenn was an option, even when Joe Brady was an option. I felt very confident about it. But it doesn't seem like there's that much urgency to bring him in the building. And I just wonder why. Like, whose side is that coming from? Is it from McCarthy's side or is it from the Saints side? Right now, you'd probably say it's McCarthy's side, but we'll see. Just hire Rizzi on a prove-it deal and fix the cap. I mean, you don't have to worry about the prove-it deal stuff. It's not like he'd get a really expensive contract. At this point, though, I kind of feel like that's where it's heading. I feel like they'll just make him the head coach. Either you sink or swim. I feel like that's where we might be heading. This is a tough pill to swallow, though. I mean, I'll say it a million times. I'll say it a million times more. Like, you were hoping this process, you'd get a coach in who at least gives you optimism. Because right now, as a Saints fan, what the hell do you have to be optimistic about, right? So we'll see what happens. Ben says it feels like it's just McCarthy. Who knows? I mean, possible. Maybe it's Rizzi, and then the potential home run swing is it Anthony Weaver or Mike Kafka? Because these two dudes had 2 interviews with the Saints, and they're not in the running for any other job because there is no other job. And maybe they say, hey, I'll take a swing. I'll tell you this, though, because Joe Brady just pulled out of the race. He's not the same candidate as Joe Brady. If Mike Kafka gets offered the job or is in the running, he would easily leave the Giants. So the Giants are in such a bad spot, there's a good chance he'll hit the open market anyway, that he would go for it. And that's not me saying I want Mike Kafka, by the way. I don't think the Joe Brady situation will be exclusive to everyone else. Not everyone else is going to have as many options or be able to be patient. Kafka's kind of in a lame duck situation with the Giants. You could be going from one lame duck situation to another. The rebuild has to be next season, right? I think if it's not McCarthy as the hire, the rebuild will happen next season. I think if it's McCarthy as the hire, the Saints are going to try to convince themselves, hey, let's start pushing more pieces forward. And that's going to piss me off. And that's the one reason I'm against hiring Mike McCarthy. I think Mike McCarthy is a way better coach than people give him credit for. And I'll say it a million more times. Like, I really do think he's a solid football coach. My fear, though, is that the Saints would say, hey, we got a Super Bowl winning coach. Let's try to compete in the NFC South. If it's anyone other than him, I think you're slapping the reset button a million times. If it's Anthony Weaver, reset. If it's Kafka, reset. If it's Kellen Moore, reset. Intriguing one, though, because of obviously what he's done this year. But that's just kind of where I'm at. Joshua says Sean Payton's laughing at us. I'm sure he's laughing his ass off. Bill, he was kind of responsible for this situation with Mickey, and you end up dipping at the right time, though. So Eddie says, I think it's going to take public pressure to get Gale to make a move. Same with the Pels. Yeah, maybe. And look, I think the Saints have fallen into this spot where I don't even know if mainstream media is going to give a fuck about them. Like, some organizations, when they mess up, mainstream media can't wait to pounce on them, right? Like, Cowboys hire Brian Schottenheimer, really questionable hire. They hire him. The media can't wait to jump all over them. I don't even know if the media cares enough to talk about the Saints, right? Aaron Glenn didn't want to take the in-person interview, signs with the Jets. Joe Brady doesn't want to do the in-person interview. He dips out. I don't think people really care. It's like they report the news and you keep on moving because the Saints are in a really tough spot right now. And I don't say this to be, a negative Nancy over here. I just feel like it's going to take years to get out of the gutters. And then hopefully once you get out of the gutters, you got to get the right head coach in so he can build the foundation. Unless, and I doubt this is going to happen, they strike gold with whoever they hire. Whether it's Weaver, whether it's Kafka, whether it's Kellen Moore, like maybe you get a first-year coach and you get so fucking lucky that this dude is the next special coach. But what are the odds that happens? I just can't see it, Nat says, just hiring Anthony Weaver, he wants the job. He's showing interest. Bayou Boys 504 says, McCarthy's a damn good coach when you got the staff and the pieces. I agree. I actually think McCarthy would have been an intriguing coach for the Jaguars. Obviously, they went younger with Liam Cohen, but that's what I thought would probably be a nice spot for him at the time. Ticket sales and television packages will drop exponentially. I mean, guys, they were not on Sunday Night Football this year. They're not going to be on Sunday Night Football next year. I don't even know if they'll be on Monday Night Football next year at this point. I mean, I think every team's got to be, but why would you put them on any other primetime game other than the shitty Thursday night games? Because this is the product right now. Brandon with a super chat. Thank you for the support. Brandon says, hire Dennis Allen. Hey, look, at least if Dennis Allen coached the whole fucking season, they probably would have went 2-15 and have another number one pick. Maybe that'd make them like slightly more attractive. And mind you, the head coach that I've been complaining about, and I'll probably pop about 1 million blood vessels in my head because I've been nonstop complaining about the coach and the GM and all this problem. The GM thinks the coach, who was on a 7-game losing streak, wasn't that bad of a coach. And I forgot what his record was. What was it, like 26-52? Jesus Christ, man. Tramal says, Mickey doesn't see this as a bad job. Let me tell you where the Saints are at right now. Not that you guys don't know, so I'm not lecturing anyone. Mickey Loomis steps up to the podium for his end-of-season press conference. And when asked about the job search and what's appealing, pretty much said, it's 1 of 32. Yeah, it's 32 of 32. It's 32 of 32. Because no one wants to coach this team right now. And the guys that do, it's like, oh, well, that's the only excuse because it's a head coaching gig. There's no desire to coach the Saints right now. And when your GM admits at the fucking podium that, like, hey, we're 1 of 32, and then like 2 sentences later forgets where he's picking, yeah, no shit, no one wants to coach this team. And that's why last night when the news broke that, the Cowboys were going Schottenheimer, I said in theory, the Saints could have their pick at head coach. And I made sure I put that in there because I had a feeling there was going to be at least 1 or 2 coaches that are going to say, you know what, I'm good. I don't need it. I don't need the stress and the aggravation of trying to lift up a franchise that wants to be the Steelers when, newsflash, the Steelers haven't done anything fucking relevant in 12 years, probably more. So I just don't know where we go from here as a fan base, right? Because it just feels like there's going to be more frustration. And at this point, I just kind of think we're heading towards maybe Rizzy getting the job. I really don't know who gets it. Because I know you guys are talking about McCarthy and bringing him in. if McCarthy has some type of intel that he could get a job next year, why not just wait? Why not just wait? Like, it's late in the process, although he's got like the coaching cachet to get whoever he wants in. He's been working around the block for a while. But why would he take this job if he has any inclination that he could get a better one next year? If he can't, then yeah, just stay in New Orleans. Go to New Orleans and call it a day. But if he can't, I don't know where the Saints, I don't know where they go. I really don't. When will Gail wake up? Glenn didn't want the job because we won't fire Mickey. Brady said no. Does she not see that Loomis is the problem? I think they were trying to get one more year of like, hey, let's see if we can fix this right now, which will be this offseason. And so far, we've had them not know what pick they have in the draft. We've had them admit that they're just 1 of 32. That's the only sales point. You missed out on Aaron Glenn, who played and coached here. You missed out on Joe Brady, who coached here first. And let's see. Ben Johnson didn't want to talk to you. I will bet my ass that Cliff Kingsbury doesn't want to talk to you. So we'll see. You can always turn around things in the NFL, but when your head's so far up your ass, it's very hard to turn around. So until they get their head out of their ass, they're not going to be able to do that. Do you think Kingsbury will be next to turn down the job? I do. I guarantee you that the wording around Kingsbury is going to change. They're either going to win on Sunday and the Commanders will make the Super Bowl, and a reporter will say he's decided to hold off on coaching, elsewhere, and he's going to stick with the Commanders for another season. Or they're going to say after the loss, he wants to run it back and be with the Commanders for one more season. There's no way he's taking the Saints job. Just no reason, And I'm not trying to be rude. Look at the options the Saints are interviewing. It doesn't mean that they're wrong, because you can always, when you get Sean Payton back then, that was not the guy. You did not think he was going to do what he did. Different situation now, though. But the candidates the Saints are bringing in for interviews, no one else is interviewing Mike Kafka. Anthony Weaver, very respected guy, so this ain't a diss on him, but the demand for Anthony Weaver wasn't that high this year. Darren Rizzi's only other interview for a head coaching job was the Jets, who, by the way, interviewed everyone. They interviewed everyone. I might have got a call at 11:55 at night, said, hey, you want to interview with the Jets just so we could get one more candidate in? They interviewed everyone. They interviewed Mike fucking Loxley, a guy who can't even go over 500 in college. So the Saints have just interviewed coaches who, in reality, don't want to be anywhere. So I just don't see how we could stay super positive here. And I see what you're talking about, Clarence, saying Washington offensive coordinator can take the job, and then I got to stop being negative. I don't see how you stay positive in this situation, because even if they hire a head coach, but they got to hire a head coach anyway, the problems are still lying within the organization. So even if you get a coach that gets you excited, you still got a GM who hasn't drafted particularly well. You still got a really bad cap situation. You still don't know who your quarterback is. So I think it's going to take an awful lot of time for them to fix this. And frankly, guys, I don't even care if Kingsbury were to say yes or no. I don't think Kingsbury would be the guy to fix this. You went into a situation with the Cardinals where you got your number one pick, you got what you want to do. They had one good season and 3 bad seasons. So I don't even think that would be the guy, and I'm sure he'll tell them no anyway. DJ Trauma Gaming with the Super Chat says, bro, when will Gail see the writing? One job open. Appreciate the support, man. I don't know. I think we're getting there. I think the Saints are making progress in that regard. Overstepping Mickey to fire Dennis Allen's a start. I think it's going to take a little bit longer, though. I think that maybe this process is what opens their eyes. If they care about the product, if they truly, truly care about the Saints product of being a proud organization, maybe this will do it. Shmuel says, should Todd Monken be added to the list? Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing to add more candidates, but why would, if you're Todd Monken, why would you do that now, though? I kind of wait. I know he was in the mix for the Raiders or mentioned for the Raiders, but that's about it. I thought he'd get more interviews this cycle, to be honest, but I'd imagine another year with Baltimore is what happens. Another super chat from DJ Trauma Gaming. Thank you so much for the support. Says Gail's peers are telling her, can she listen? We're about to find out. I will say, though, you guys can answer me in the chat here. If the Saints were to, let's say Monday happens, they fire Mickey Loomis, would that make you guys happy? Like, would that immediately change the vibe? I'm curious. I think for me, it would change a little. Like, it would change the vibe a little. But then whoever takes the next job is like, hey, I gotta take this on. So I wonder if they just like lame duck this with whoever the next coach is and him. And then next year or in 2 years from now, it's new coach, new GM. I just feel like that's where we're heading. But if you're going for good publicity and you're going for trying to win the fans back, I think that would be a move that helps people. And judging by the chat, I think it's a pretty resounding yes. So I appreciate you guys getting back to me on that. Some of these are good. Clarence says, I truly think going hire an offensive coach, going to head coach Joe Brady was not ready to be the guy. I think that's fair. Look, this isn't a depressing day because Joe Brady said no, right? Like, it's not, oh man, like Joe Brady was going to fix the Saints. I don't even know if he was going to fix the Saints. The problem is a guy who coached inside your organization doesn't even want to take an in-person visit with you. That to me is a problem. So it's the optics more so than the candidate. I don't know if Joe Brady's ready to coach. I honestly think if Joe Brady came here, he'd flop. I think he would flop. But the optics of this situation are extremely bad that this dude don't want to interview with you. And it's the same thing for Aaron Glenn, who they can spin it however they want. Aaron Glenn was their number one candidate. They wanted Aaron Glenn. That was the guy they wanted to bring in the building. A lot of people thought it would happen. And he said, hey, I'll take on the Jets. And mind you, I know he was a great player with the Jets. He had so much success with the Jets, so it's not like a random thing. But the Jets, for my entire existence, have been bad. And yet that's where he ended up going. Doc54 says, I'd be happy if Mickey got canned, but I'd be pissed because it's 3 years too late. It is 3 years too late there. Moonfish says, I'm going to force feed Mickey Loomis my toenail clippings. That might be the craziest thing I've ever seen. That might be the craziest thing I've seen. Clarence says, I really think the Cowboys are a bad organization than the Saints. I guess you think a worse organization than the Saints. I don't think the Cowboys are a well-run organization. They're popular. They're kind of like the Lakers in the sense that, like, they'll get a big name player. They'll always be on TV. They'll be very, very, very flashy. But at the end of the day, is winning the priority? I don't think winning's the priority for Dallas. I think Jerry Jones being the center of attention is priority for Dallas. Brandon with the super chat. Thank you for the support. Brandon says Mike McCarthy 2025. Well, I mean, at this point, I'd hope so. Can they even land that ship? Can they even land the Mike McCarthy ship at this point? You know, I still have my doubts. Bird Talk says the question is, why are they saying no? I think there's just too many complications right now in New Orleans. Cap situation, quarterback situation. It's a very long rebuild. You're probably looking at the next 2 years of being, kind of in the gutter. You got to nail your draft picks, and that's on the GM more than it is the coach. And maybe if you're the coach, you don't trust the GM to hit on those picks. It is really tough. Eddie says, watch Rizzy say no to the job and go to Denver. I can't see him say no to the job. Would be quite the blow if he did, but I can't see him saying no to the job if he gets offered it. Jacob says, I don't care if the Saints get rid of Mickey Loomis and the next GM isn't better, but even if they attempt to make a step in the right direction, at least they tried. I'm with you on that. Lord says, Mickey's in his fat Elvis phase. Old, out of shape, out of touch, and only singing the old stuff. Fair enough, but didn't Elvis still have pipes back at that stage? Like, couldn't he still sing pretty well even when he was loaded with shit? What can you do? What can Mickey do at this point? He's not hitting on draft picks. I've never even heard of a first-time head coach turning down a gig. That's how bad things are in New Orleans. It's happened before. This isn't like an exclusive thing to the Saints. This happens, time and time again. I'm pretty sure Ben Johnson turned down gigs last year, but it's just to have former coaches of your franchise not want to come back is the bigger thing for me. Eddie says, what do you think about Kafka? He just wrapped up his in-person interview. Mike Kafka is such a fascinating, candidate because you can't just look at the Giants being bad and be like, oh, he's awful. He had success with the Kansas City Chiefs, which led him to the Giants in the first place, and Andy Reid raved about him a lot. But after that first year with the Giants, everything has fallen off a cliff. They made the playoffs that first year with Dable, and the staff was really good, and Kafka got the best out of Daniel Jones, which is a huge plus. But the last 2 years have been really underwhelming, and I don't know if that's on him, if that's on Dable, if that's on everyone. There's just a lot of question marks there. I wouldn't mind if they hire him just to take a swing, but there's questions and there's concerns if you do hire him. Kevin says we're fucked regardless of who our coach is going to be. Our roster's old, untalented, and our young guys can't stay healthy. Yep. Moonfish says, why would Mike take the job? It's practically guarantees the end of his career for bad, which we are. I think Rizzi is the probable candidate after Brady withdrawing. That's where I'm at too, man. That's where I'm at. Another super chat from DJ Trauma Gaming says we have to start looking at Gale, complicit in it. First off, thank you again for the support, man. Second, yeah, I mean, if you're the owner and you see things aren't going well, you got to make a move. Shad Khan, 2 days ago was like, hey, we're not getting a coach because of Trent Baalke. I'm going to have to fire his ass. Now, I should have fired him 3 weeks earlier. That's on him. You could argue you should have fired him a year earlier, but still made the move. Askabone with a $2 super chat. Thank you for the support, man. Says, I don't get the McCarthy hate. He's a good coach. Yeah, I've said it a million times. I'll say it a couple more times more. I think McCarthy's a good coach as well. And I think the hate for him is a little forced. And I don't know why it is that. But the problem is if McCarthy goes here, there's two things. Does he want this job, right? Because as you guys mentioned, if he flops, he's probably not getting another gig. And on the other hand, if you're the Saints and you do hire McCarthy, are you so, stubborn on winning now that you push more chips forward when you shouldn't, and you should just kind of eat your medicine or take your medicine, and reset? That's my concern. I think Mike McCarthy's a really good coach, though. I would argue if the Bears couldn't get Ben Johnson, that was the guy that I think they should have hired. Would have been a good stabilizing coach for Caleb Williams. But I think he's a good head coach. There's no question in my opinion. 504 Coach says, can't blame Joe Brady. Might as well wait another year for a better situation. Mickey has ruined the organization and Gale sat back and did nothing. Yeah, I think that's fair. Nat says Alvin was right. Just bring everyone back. I think that's true. Uncle Aaron says McCarthy already had a bad owner. I think he'd rather wait. Yeah, if you dealt with one circus, why would you want to go to another? I think that's definitely a question, Moonfish says people hate McCarthy because Stephen A. Smith had taken a dump on his reputation every day for the last 5 years. It's funny, though, he's in a similar boat as Mike Tomlin. They make the playoffs consistently when their rosters are healthy and haven't gotten far of late, but they're both Super Bowl winners. I don't get why he gets hated on, man. It's kind of odd. Clarence says, I think the new coach will trade Carr. He won't trade if it's Rizzi, though. I think Rizzi's been adamant about that already, but maybe I'm wrong. Loomis indicated he doesn't want to reset. It's not a full rebuild. I think that is just your GM speak, I think that's your politically correct GM answer. Mad Romer says, you don't think we can try to look at Slowick as head coach? He just got fired as OC. Why would you look at him as head coach? I don't think so. I think that would be a little bit of a surprise. I wouldn't be surprised if Slowick goes back to the 49ers or something and tries to work his way up the ladder again. I wouldn't join the Bears if I was Dennis Allen. DA can pick his spot right now, and he should go somewhere where there's some chance of success. That's fair. I kind of thought DA would go to the Niners if they didn't get Robert Saleh. That's a guy that Shanahan was talked about. But I don't know. Bears might not be a bad spot. Midlife Tyson with the super chat. Thank you so much for the support. Says if Mike went 12-5 with Dak, he can do it with Spencer Rattler. Well, not 12-5 off the rip, but he's good at coaching quarterbacks. I talked about it this week, right? Somebody was like, hey, what's McCarthy's appeal? And I said, he's good with quarterbacks. I said, well, he's had Rodgers and Dak. And I said, okay. And he's 9-5 when Cooper Rush is his starter. So let's just give him some credit. So I actually would like to see McCarthy work with Spencer Rattler, but would he work with Rattler or would they keep Derek Carr? I think that's kind of the question right now with this team. DJ Trauma says, boycott merchandise and concessions. I know some people are still going to go, but please, y'all. Yeah, look, truthfully, I don't really buy much merchandise anymore when it comes to the Saints. I think the last Saints thing I bought was when Michael Thomas was still balling, so it's been a while. But fans are fans. It's tough to say that's what needs to happen, right? Because you're just looking for some optimism and an escape. Forgive says, I think they give Rizzi, and he'll be the bridge until Loomis gets fired and the next head coach can draft their quarterback and have cap space. I kind of think that's where they're heading as well. I kind of do. So I'll take 2-3 more comments and then I'm going to head out, guys, because I got to carry on with the rest of my night, unfortunately. I would love to talk to you guys until the sun comes back up, but I got some things to do. But if you guys have any other comments you want to get in real quick before I wrap up, let me know. Why not reach out to Eric Bieniemy? I think, guys, that ship has sailed. Eric Bieniemy had a long interview with the Saints years ago when they hired Dennis Allen. He's kind of fallen stock-wise of late. So, I just think that I just don't think it's going to happen. Super chat from Mike McCarthy. Hate on me now. I'm in the room, fools. Well, Mike McCarthy, will you take the Saints job? We need to know. We need to find that out. Thank you for the support, though. I really appreciate it. Patrick says, at this point, what do you think is going to be the best case scenario for the Saints? Best case scenario, and I don't think this is going to happen, is you get lucky on one of these young coaches and they end up being the guy. I think that's best case scenario. Like you hit on Kellen Moore or Mike Kafka or Anthony Weaver, they end up being the dude. What I think another good scenario will be for them, though, is you hire Rizzi full-time now. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But in a year or two from now, you reset and your new GM and your new coach are coming into a situation where it's a clean slate. And yeah, the next 2 seasons of football will be miserable for us fans, but then you can offer the sell of we have cap space, we have some young talent, if you hit on picks, obviously, and now we're ready to take that next step. So that's the more likely scenario. But in terms of best case scenario, I think that it's probably you hire one of these young guys and you get lucky, but I just don't know if that's going to happen. I really don't. Forgive says, I wonder, does Loomis feel embarrassed? I don't know. I would imagine you got to start feeling it, right? Like maybe at first you don't feel it, but it's got to start setting in. And I think it probably is at this point. All right, I'll take 1 or 2 more, and then I'm going to wrap up. But this is quite a situation for the Saints. And I do wonder if this either just makes them kind of panic hire to get someone in the building like soon, or if this ends up kind of prolonging and takes even longer than it might. Jonathan says, can we pull a Jaguars and fire Loomis? Could they? Yes. Will they? My guess is no. But they could, obviously. They absolutely could. Clarence says Moore could be a great leader. That is definitely the hope. And if you hire a guy like him or Mike Kafka or Anthony Weaver, that would definitely be the hope for the Saints. But we'll see what happens, guys, regardless of what the Saints do, whether it is another interview, whether it is another candidate pulling out, whether it's a candidate deciding, hey, fuck it, I'll take the job. We'll have it covered for you here at Boo Crew Media, so make sure you subscribe to the channel. We'll have some content coming up on Monday. I'll do some stuff here regarding the coaching search if something doesn't break on Sunday. But we'll see what happens. I really appreciate you guys tuning in and bringing the support. You guys are absolutely the best. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday night, even though we got some, kind of crap thrown at us here with this Joe Brady situation. But thank you guys again for the support, and stay tuned for more content here from the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.